In a political earthquake shaking both Washington and Mexico City, Donald Trump has just been dealt what many analysts call a jaw-shattering blow, and not just metaphorically. As the former president returned to the White House promising to crush Mexico's economy with a brutal 30% tariff wall, the script flipped dramatically. Mexico, against all odds, and amid relentless threats, has delivered one of the most shocking economic turnarounds in recent political history. Picture this: while Washington is drowning in its own storm of policy chaos and trade tantrums, Mexico's economy is not just surviving, it's thriving, leaving Trump and his closest advisors stunned and politically cornered. This isn't just news, it's a spectacle of resilience, strategy, and power politics that no one in Washington saw coming. In the second quarter of this year, Mexico's GDP quietly but decisively climbed by 1.2%. The industrial sector, which many predicted would be devastated by tariff threats, expanded by 0.8%. Even more shocking, Mexico managed to cut its public debt down to 49.5% of GDP, thanks to a strong appreciating peso. Meanwhile, in the halls of the White House, Trump's high-stakes economic gambit appears to be crumbling. His plan to intimidate Mexico into submission has backfired spectacularly, exposing deep vulnerabilities in America's own trade dependencies. President Claudia Sheinbaum, facing the same threats, has not only stood her ground, but fired back with cold, hard facts during her morning conferences, turning what was meant to be Mexico's breaking point into a masterclass in political and economic counterpunching. The tension isn't just a headline, it's a live geopolitical drama playing out across North America's most powerful trade corridors. While Trump warns of crushing sanctions designed to break Mexico's back, Washington insiders admit privately that pulling the trigger on these tariffs could cause a supply chain bloodbath in U.S. manufacturing and retail. More than 80% of Mexico's exports head north, meaning the shockwaves of any punitive move would ricochet straight into American factories, jobs, and prices. The stakes are enormous: billions of dollars in bilateral trade, the stability of the USMCA agreement, and the future of cross-border manufacturing alliances. Yet Mexico has not blinked. Instead, it's leveraging its position as an indispensable partner in North American trade, showing that the White House cannot simply strong-arm its southern neighbor without self-inflicted wounds. Analysts from Grupo Financiero Bas and other institutions warn of recession risks, but even they acknowledge that Mexico's steady hand and currency strength have positioned it better than ever to weather Washington's political storms. And the shock doesn't stop there. Behind closed doors, U.S. congressional leaders, Democrats and Republicans alike, have been meeting with Sheinbaum's administration, acknowledging that Trump's hardline approach could spiral into a full-blown trade war neither nation can afford. This is not just politics, it's a high-voltage, globally consequential standoff. As Mexico's economy ticks upward and Washington's rhetoric grows desperate, one question looms larger than ever. Has Trump finally met his match in a Mexico that refuses to bow, refuses to break, and might just be teaching the world how to defy even the most powerful bully in global politics? In the midst of this political firestorm, tensions escalated further when Trump demanded immediate action from Mexico to halt fentanyl trafficking and migration surges at the border. He threatened that if Mexico did not comply, a sweeping 30% tariff on all Mexican exports would take effect starting August 1st. The announcement rattled markets initially, but the anticipated economic collapse in Mexico never came. Instead, investors watched in astonishment as the peso rallied, strengthening Mexico's financial position and slashing its debt ratio from 51.3% at the end of 2024 to 49.5%. Economists called it a slap in the face to Washington's intimidation tactics. At the same time, Sheinbaum's administration doubled down on diplomatic outreach, meeting U.S. ambassadors and congressional leaders to stress that Mexico had already fulfilled its commitments under existing trade and security agreements. Marcelo Ebrard, Mexico's Secretary of Economy, publicly declared that everything Mexico had to do is done. Now it's Washington's turn to act responsibly, a statement that sent shockwaves through U.S. political circles. Meanwhile, U.S. industries, from automotive to agriculture, grew increasingly anxious. They know that if Trump enforces these tariffs, the blowback would be devastating for American supply chains. Mexican factories supply critical parts for U.S. carmakers, and agricultural exports cross the border daily to feed American households. Major U.S. retailers and manufacturers have begun lobbying aggressively against Trump's tariff plan, warning of skyrocketing consumer prices and mass layoffs if trade is disrupted. Adding fuel to the political fire, new data showed that despite global uncertainty and threats from Washington, Mexico's services sector expanded by 0.7%, and agricultural activities rose 4.5% year over year. The only sector that showed weakness was primary industries with a 1.3% quarterly dip, yet even this remained in positive territory annually. Such resilience forced the Bank of Mexico to revise its 2025 growth forecast to a cautious 0.1%, while the government maintained a more optimistic outlook of 1.5% to 2.3%. Analysts note that this divergence reflects a deeper political battle. The central bank warns of potential U.S. trade aggression, while Sheinbaum's administration signals confidence in Mexico's long-term strategy. This isn't just an economic story, it's a power struggle playing out on the world stage. Behind the scenes, diplomatic negotiations are relentless. Immigration reform, border security, and cartel violence are all intertwined with tariff talks, creating a tangled web of political chess moves. During a tense meeting at Mexico's National Palace, Sheinbaum told U.S. lawmakers bluntly that Mexican labor fuels America's economy and deserves legal protection. The message resonated beyond Mexico, echoing across Latin America as a rare moment of defiance against U.S. economic bullying. With Washington trapped between protecting its own economy and fulfilling Trump's campaign promises, the world watches closely. Will the U.S. risk triggering a cross-border economic meltdown just to make a political point? Or is this the moment Mexico permanently shifts the balance of power in North American trade relations, proving that resilience and strategic diplomacy can outmaneuver even the most aggressive White House tactics? As negotiations grind on cracks within Washington's political establishment are beginning to widen. Republican lawmakers, once unified behind Trump's hardline stance, are now voicing concerns that pushing Mexico too far could unleash a domestic economic disaster months before a crucial election cycle. Leading business coalitions are issuing dire warnings that a 30% tariff would not only hurt Mexico, but boomerang into U.S. consumer prices, sparking inflationary shocks in sectors ranging from groceries to automobiles. Meanwhile, Democrats seize the moment to paint Trump as reckless, arguing that his tariff tantrums undermine decades of carefully built North American cooperation. Yet despite mounting pressure, Trump doubles down publicly, vowing that Mexico must pay the price for exploiting U.S. generosity. The rhetoric is fiery, but behind closed doors, White House officials scramble to find off-ramps that can save face without detonating the continental economy. For Mexico, every passing day without tariffs strengthens its negotiating hand. The country's debt burden is shrinking, foreign investment remains steady, and the peso continues its upward trajectory. Even international observers, who once predicted Mexico would fold quickly under U.S. threats, are now calling its economic strategy a masterstroke of modern statecraft. President Sheinbaum's popularity surges as she projects calm determination, framing Mexico's response as not just an economic defense, but a fight for national dignity against bullying superpower politics. The geopolitical implications are massive. Experts warn that if Washington fails to bring Mexico to heel, it could signal to other U.S. trading partners that Trump's threats are bluffs, emboldening countries from Canada to Brazil to resist similar tactics. Moreover, the crisis could permanently alter the balance of economic influence in North America, with Mexico emerging as a more independent and resilient partner, rather than a subordinate neighbor. While negotiations continue, high-level security talks underscore that both nations remain tied by more than trade. Counter-narcotics operations, migrant labor policies, and cross-border security remain vital to both economies. Yet even here, Sheinbaum pushes back against Washington's unilateral demands, insisting on a bilateral approach that respects Mexico's sovereignty. This firm yet pragmatic stance has not gone unnoticed. Editorials from London to Buenos Aires describe Mexico's response as a new template for negotiating with Washington, one that doesn't involve surrender. As markets react and diplomatic channels buzz, the question now, haunting policymakers from Capitol Hill to Wall Street, is stark. Has Trump's once feared tariff weapon lost its edge exposed by Mexico's refusal to flinch? Or will he escalate further, risking a full-scale trade war that could send shockwaves far beyond the Rio Grande? The world waits as this high-stakes political drama edges closer to a climax, one that could redefine U.S.-Mexico relations for a generation, and test whether Trump's brand of economic brinkmanship can still bend nations to America's will, or whether Mexico has just rewritten the rules of the game. Global reactions to this escalating standoff are pouring in, amplifying the political drama. European trade officials warn that if Trump imposes the 30% tariffs on Mexico, global markets could experience a domino effect, disrupting supply chains far beyond North America. Asian manufacturers, many of which rely on Mexico as a bridge into the U.S., are already exploring contingency plans, rerouting logistics to avoid potential border chaos. This uncertainty has pushed multinational corporations to quietly lobby the Biden-era holdovers in Washington and key Republican senators to cool Trump's ambitions. Yet Trump thrives on brinkmanship and public spectacle. At recent rallies, he doubled down, telling supporters that Mexico is bleeding America dry, and promising that tariffs will teach its leaders a lesson they'll never forget. The crowd roared, but analysts noted a striking omission: no concrete plan to shield American consumers and businesses from the economic fallout. Meanwhile, Mexico's government is executing a diplomatic offensive, sending envoys to Canada, the EU, and China to strengthen trade alliances and hedge against U.S. volatility. This strategic maneuvering underscores a profound shift. Mexico is no longer acting as a junior partner in North American trade, but as an assertive player with global reach. Claudia Sheinbaum's administration frames this moment as a fight for economic sovereignty, rallying public support domestically and abroad. In televised addresses, she highlights hard data showing Mexico's resilience, a steadily growing services sector, industrial strength, despite U.S. threats, and debt reduction driven by a surging peso. Financial experts describe it as a textbook example of economic counterpressure, turning U.S. tariffs from a sword into a boomerang. International media now feature headlines declaring that Mexico has outsmarted Washington, portraying Trump as a leader cornered by his own trade war gambit. This narrative resonates with an American public already weary of inflation and supply chain woes. In battleground states reliant on Mexican imports, voters are voicing anger at the prospect of higher prices and job losses if tariffs are enforced. Political strategists warn that this issue could fracture Trump's base, splitting hardline immigration hawks from pro-business conservatives who see tariffs as political suicide. With tension mounting, both governments have agreed to a last-ditch summit aimed at averting full-scale economic conflict. The stakes could not be higher: trillions in cross-border trade, millions of jobs, and the credibility of U.S. economic power all hang in the balance. As this high-stakes drama unfolds, the world watches a rare spectacle: a nation once dismissed as vulnerable, now standing firm against America's most combative president. The ultimate question now is unavoidable. Will Trump push forward, igniting a trade war that could shatter North America's economic foundation, or will Mexico's defiant resilience force Washington to step back and negotiate on equal terms, rewriting the future of global trade politics?